welcome back to Lady Jane Books. Today I'm doing a full review of The Haunting of Brynn Wilder. The Haunting of Brynn Wilder was my very first novel of 2021, so very prestigious spot in the Lady Jane universe. And I hate to say that it was a complete flop, in my opinion. I rated The Haunting of Brynn Wilder a dismal 1.5 out of 5 stars. This novel follows Brynn Wilder as she travels to a sleepy lakeside community. Bryn has just experienced unimaginable tragedy, and a lakeside getaway seems the best place for her to heal. There, she meets a delightful cast of characters, but it soon becomes apparent that not all things are as they seem. This book is kind of like one of those all-you-can-eat buffets that claim to serve everything under the sun. You have hamburgers, pizza, chicken parm, lo mein, fried chicken, pancakes, bacon, and everything else you can possibly think of for food groups. And you know, walking in there, that you will get everything, but absolutely none of it will actually be any good. That is The Haunting of Brynn Wilder. I have some major issues with this book. The first problem has to do with its marketing. And to illustrate my point, I am now going to read you the blurb that sold me on this book. According to Amazon Kindle, from the #1 Amazon charts best-selling author of Daughters of the Lakes comes an enthralling spellbinder of love, death, and a woman on the edge. After a devastating loss, Brynn Wilder escapes to Wharton, a tourist town on Lake Superior, to reset. Checking into a quaint boarding house for the summer, she hopes to put her life into perspective. In her fellow lodgers, she finds a friendly company of strangers. The frail Alice, cared for by a married couple with a heartbreaking story of their own. Luann, the eccentric and lovable owner of the inn. And Dominic, an unsettlingly handsome man inked from head to toe in mesmerizing tattoos. But in this inviting refuge, where a century of souls have passed, a mystery begins to swirl. Alice knows things about Bryn, about all of them, that she shouldn't. Bad dreams and night whispers lure Bryn to a shuttered room at the end of the hall, a room still heavy with recent deaths. And now she's become irresistibly drawn to Dominic, even in the shadow of rumors that wherever he goes, suspicious death follows. In this chilling season of love, transformation, and fear, something is calling for Bryn. To settle her past, she may have no choice but to answer. Now, before I continue, I want you to think, what does that story sound like? What does this cover look like? What does the title convey? To me, all of these elements point to a horror novel. Something about paranormal, ghosts, fear, mystery, something like that. Something spooky, scary. A good time, right? So my first inclination is that this is a horror novel. Nope! This is everything but horror. This is a romance, thriller, mystery, paranormal, slight fantasy, and maybe just a pinch of horror. I personally have a theory about this, and I've discussed it with a couple of people on BookTube already. And my theory is that the absolute worst books have the best titles and covers. And the reason why is I believe that publishers know that the content will be such crap that they have no hope to sell it unless it's for first impressions of the cover alone. This cover to me speaks of something spooky, mystical, creepy, ghost-like, and I honestly got none of that within the actual content. Also, the title is incredibly misleading as there wasn't anything actually haunting Brynn Wilder. I feel like publishers know when they might have trouble selling a book and therefore put all of their resources into marketing it to reach a desired audience. However, I personally, as part of that audience, want my $1.99 back. The second issue that I have with this book is that it is one of the most depressing pieces of literature I have ever read. The book starts out promising with a backstory and some mystical setup and some kind of creepy elements. And then right in the middle of it, there's this giant chunk of the story dedicated to exploring Bryn's grief over the loss of her mother to cancer. And this takes up so much of the book. And I will say that it was incredibly sad and depressing. And yes, in another story, it may serve the story very well. But when I was looking for a horror novel, I was not looking for a family drama. And what's more disappointing about this book is that that is a recurring theme throughout the novel. And I found it very annoying that Bryn would constantly say, I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want to talk about it. And yet somehow we always ended up rehashing the loss of her mother and her grief and the struggle that she went through with her mother having cancer. For someone who says they don't want to talk about it, they talked about it a lot in this book. And personally, I don't think it served the story very much. It was honestly the saddest crap I have ever read. And I found myself thinking, is this going to get better, Wendy? Like, you must be so much fun at parties because holy crap, you can really bring down a mood. I personally think that if the story went in a different direction, the section about losing her mother may have been so much more interesting and rewarding. But when you're going into a book thinking it is a ghost story or a horror novel, it just kind of takes the reader for a turn that's not for the best. And then once we get out of the mourning for her mother and the rehashing of her mother's battle with cancer, we dive right into the story of Alice, who is suffering from dementia. And it's kind of like a double whammy, like we just went through all of this trauma for the main character, and now we're having more trauma for this character of Alice. And to me, it just was too much. I picked up this novel thinking it was going to be like a haunted house, a scary story type of thing, maybe a mystery. But for this, it was just really exploring the sadness of losing a family member to cancer, and then also the sadness of losing a family member to dementia or Alzheimer's, depending. Alzheimer's, I believe it was. And that's not what I signed up for. It's not what I signed up for at all. Now, I have a huge respect for authors. I absolutely believe that they put their heart and soul on the page when they write, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of rejections, a lot of long nights. So I 1000% respect any author who writes a book. However, I'm going to have to get a little bit mean with this one. Throughout this novel, I almost got the impression that the author started writing a story that she had in mind, set it up a certain way for it to be a hard, creepy novel, and then got sidetracked with perhaps a personal story or just the idea of grief. And then she just kind of word purged her grief and loss onto the middle of this book, and then tried to tie it up and relate it somehow to the beginning of the novel. And it did not work. And I almost feel that the publishers may have known about this or felt badly about it and just kind of tried their best to market it and sell it because it was kind of unsellable as it was. And then I feel that the publishers just felt really bad and didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings and passed the book along the process. That's how I feel reading this. It honestly left the story very haphazard, confusing, and disjointed. I also feel that there were just way too many elements at play within this novel. You have the mystery of who the tattooed man is. You have the romance between the tattooed man and Bryn. You have the setup of a haunted house story with voices in the night and knocking on doors and stuff. You have the drama of a family tragedy, both in her loss of her mother and with Alice's situation. And then you also have like this cozy mystery feel-good type of novel with this beautiful setting and lovely cast of characters. That was too much in one book. And then the author kind of tried to push a mystical type of side to it and a greater storyline at the very, very end and a greater meaning. And personally, it just did not work. It was just too much, in my opinion. I personally feel that this book would have been way better off picking one or two of these elements or stories and building on them directly rather than trying to throw the entire kitchen sink. Because the problem is, when I put this book down, I didn't know what I read. I don't know if I read a mystery, a romance, horror novel, deeper meaning type of book, fantasy. I don't know what I read. And I hate that feeling. I've never read anything like that before, and personally, I would never read something like that again. What was also very infuriating is that I felt that the author had plenty of opportunities to turn this book into something really great. She seemed to continue to set up something and run with the storyline, but by the time she did, she had already started another section of a storyline here. She set up a beautiful romance, but then she added in the paranormal elements, and then I'm like, well, I don't care about the romance anymore. Tell me about the knocking at the door. Tell me at these visions. Tell me about that dead body you mentioned a couple of pages back. And it just seemed very flighty and all over the place, and that the author really couldn't settle down into a story. I personally think this book would have been better off with a more sinister turn, because it started to go there with some of the mystery surrounding the tattooed man, and it would have really fit well if Bryn fell in love with the tattooed man and no one knows where he came from and no one knows where he's going and what's going on with him, and he has all this mystery surrounding him. But the ending was just so goody-goody that it kind of made me sick. I would have preferred if there was a darker twist to the novel, or something kind of scary or creepy or sinister. Yeah, make the handsome guy a mass murderer. I'm here for that. But I'm definitely not here for the actual ending. I'm not here for that ending. It was honestly just random, in my opinion. I do think that if the author really dedicated herself to writing one specific genre within a book, she would be very successful. I personally enjoyed the romance, but I wasn't looking for it in this book. I would have enjoyed the romance more if it was a separate entity and it was clear that this is a romance book and these two people fall in love and there's, something, but not when this book was marketed as a horror novel, because it just threw me. But I think if some of the themes were just dedicated to its own story, it would have been really great. Overall, I came away feeling like this was almost like a Hallmark horror novel, if that makes sense. Like, it was trying to be a horror novel, but it was too mushy and too gushy, had too many elements, too feel-goody. When I want my horror novels, I want them gritty. I want them all in there. I don't want to soften it. I don't want to hear about too much romance. I don't want to hear too much mystery or stuff like that. I want scary crap. And this was not scary crap. The only scary part of this book was how depressing, disjointed, and overall bad it was. In conclusion, I personally feel that this book was a bit of a bait and switch, and I really don't appreciate that in my novels. When I want to look for a horror novel and something is presented to me as a horror novel, I do not want a romance. I'm very resentful of that. I'm very resentful of the way this was marketed, and therefore I cannot recommend this book to anybody. And if a book is going to bait and switch their readers, they might as well make sure that the story is actually good. I said it. I was very surprised about this novel because I feel like a lot of people are reading it now and are having the similar experience that I did. And I think it's incredibly disappointing because I've heard so many good things about her book, The Vanishing. And so, because I had this really negative experience with The Haunting of Brynn Wilder, I almost don't want to continue reading Wendy Webb's work, but I may pick up The Vanishing. I may give her a second chance. I believe that Books Yada Yada really enjoyed The Vanishing, and we tend to be the same person on a weird cosmic plane in some way. So I might give that a chance, but honestly, if that is disappointing, I may not read any more of Wendy Webb's book after this experience. In conclusion, I did rate The Haunting of Brynn Wilder by Wendy Webb a dismal 1.5 out of 5 stars. I think it was too disjointed, too many elements going on, and marketed very, very poorly. Because of those reasons, I personally would not recommend it to any reader. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. The Haunting of Brynn Wilder by Wendy Webb. Wendy Webb. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Lady Books. Lady Books. Ow. She has just experienced. Excuse me. I threw out my neck the other day. I slept on it strange, so I feel like I have to move like this. Do y'all ever watch SpongeBob and you know that guy says my leg all the time? I feel like I'm saying my neck all the time. My neck. I couldn't get out of bed the other day. I would like just literally lay there. I was like, I'm gonna live here. I'm gonna live here now. I'm gonna live in my bed. Dream come true. But literally I couldn't like get up, so. At least now I could get up and dress, so that's good. Y'all like my makeup? It's Tippi Hedren inspired. I was watching the birds while I was sitting there like wrapped up and not moving my neck. And I love that movie so much and it's so creepy. So, Tippi Hedren inspired. No. No, Jane. Stop it. That was wrong. That was a bad thing to do, Jane. Don't turn that way. My neck. My back. Oh, gee, what are you doing? To illustrate my point, I'm going to read you the synopsis. This was bad. Oops. Don't drop that, Jane. That's expensive. Don't drop that. That's your lifeline right there. No, actually, that's Rear Window. That's not the birds. For her to heal. There, she meets a delightful cast of characters, and just kind of word purged. I can't say the word purged. Maybe because that's not a good thing to say, Jane.